The rain lashed against the windows, its metronomic rhythm a counterpoint to the unsettling static on the antique screen. I'd always wanted a vintage television, that dusty portal to a bygone era. This one, a hulking behemoth with walnut casing and faded dials, had beckoned me from a dimly lit corner of a forgotten thrift store. Its price tag, a single crumpled $5, seemed almost a dare. Now, in the isolated cabin nestled deep within the woods, it hummed with an eerie life of its own. The static wasn't the usual white noise, but a swirling vortex of color, whispers of voices, and fleeting glimpses of impossible things. A woman in a tattered gown, her eyes vacant black pits, pleaded for help from behind the veil of static. A child's laughter echoed through the room, disembodied and cold, followed by a choked sob that sent shivers down my spine. At first, I told myself it was my imagination, fueled by the solitude and the storm's symphony. But the visions intensified. One night, I saw a man, his face a blur of static, clawing at the screen from within. His desperate pleas, muffled, seemed to beg me to turn it off, to end his torment. Curiosity twisted with a growing sense of dread. I reached for the power button. My hand froze on the switch. A whisper, barely audible, cut through the static. "Don't leave. Stay with me." The voice, though raspy and distorted, held a raw vulnerability that tugged at my heartstrings. A morbid fascination took hold. I found myself drawn to the TV, hypnotized by its macabre dance of visions. Days turned into weeks, my sleep sacrificed to the flickering screen. The whispers grew clearer, forming sentences, stories. The woman was Agnes, trapped in the TV by a dark entity she called the Weaver. The child, her son Thomas, had vanished into the static. The man, Agnes's brother, became trapped trying to save her. Their tales were fragments of a chilling narrative, interwoven with glimpses of a world beyond the screen. A bleak, monochrome realm pulsating with malevolent energy. The Weaver, a shadowy figure that stalked the periphery of their stories, was pure malice, its touch twisting and corrupting all it touched. Driven by a strange sense of empathy, I started leaving offerings, candles, food, trinkets. The whispers softened, gratitude replacing despair. Agnes shared snippets of knowledge, cryptic warnings about the Weaver's growing power, hinting at a ritual that could free them. It was a gamble, a descent into madness fueled by desperation. The ritual involved ancient symbols painted on the screen, incantations whispered in a dead language, and a final sacrifice, something precious to me. I hesitated, the weight of the decision bearing down on me. Agnes's voice, however, held conviction, a promise of freedom for all of them, including me. With trembling hands, I dipped a paintbrush in blood, my own, and started tracing the symbols. The air crackled with energy, the whispers escalating into a cacophony. The Weaver burst onto the screen, its form a writhing mass of static and shadows. It screamed, a sound that ripped through my chest, a torrent of pure hatred. The ritual reached its climax. I offered the final sacrifice, a treasured locket holding a picture of my late mother, and plunged the room into darkness. Silence held its breath, punctuated only by the storm's angry roar. Then, a flicker on the screen. A single image, grainy and black and white. A woman, a child, and a man, reunited in a field of static sunflowers. Their smiles, etched into the flickering picture, held a bitter sweetness that spoke of liberation. The TV died, a hollow silence filling the room. The storm had passed, leaving behind a crispness in the air and a strange sense of peace. I wasn't sure if it was real or a figment of my madness, but as dawn painted the sky, I felt a lightness, a burden lifted. The antique television sits in the corner now, a dark monolith with stories locked within its cold metal heart. I don't turn it on. I know what lurks there. The echoes of a nightmare glimpse through a gateway to the unknown. But sometimes, in the stillness of the night, I hear a whisper, a single word on the edge of hearing. Thank you. And I am reminded that even in the darkest corners of the unseen, light can find a way, and sometimes the greatest horror paves the way for the most profound gratitude. Weeks passed, the memory of the ritual clinging to me like cobwebs. The silence of the television was both eerie and reassuring, but the quiet couldn't last forever. One night, a scratching sound from behind the screen jolted me awake. It was rhythmic, almost persistent. Then a whisper, faint at first, growing stronger. "Help us. Trapped. Again." Panic flooded my veins. The Weaver? No, it couldn't be. I raced to the TV, ripping the back panel off with desperate hands. Inside, the scene from that night remained frozen. The three figures bathed in static sunflowers. But something was different. Their smiles were gone, replaced by looks of terror, their eyes fixed on a point beyond the screen. My blood ran cold. They weren't alone. A tendril of pure blackness, like smoke writhing in the void, slithered toward them from the back of the set. Its touch seemed to corrupt everything it grazed, the sunflowers withering into static thorns, the figures blurring at the edges, their cries dissolving into screams. Without thinking, I plunged my hand into the screen, aiming for the tendril. A searing pain erupted, 1,000 needles stabbing into my flesh. The tendril recoiled, but the agony refused to abate. I screamed, collapsing to the floor as the black smoke pulsed like a malevolent heart. Then, a voice. Deep, ancient, it resonated through the room, shaking the very walls. "Foolish mortal, you interfere with forces beyond your grasp. Now you will join them, another plaything in my tapestry of terror." Terror gave way to defiance. I couldn't let them suffer alone. Gripping the tendril with an unnatural strength, I channeled the memories of Agnes, the desperation of her story, into a defiant roar. My scream merged with those trapped inside the screen, a symphony of resistance against the encroaching darkness. The room pulsed with energy. The TV began to crackle, sparks flying from its aged circuits. The tendril writhed, trying to break free, but my grip held firm. My vision blurred, the edges of the world dissolving into static. In a flash of blinding light, everything went black. When I woke, I was surrounded by an inky void, cold and endless. The only sound was a faint ticking, like a clock counting down to oblivion. Fear threatened to consume me, but then a flicker of light, a firefly, its luminescence casting long spectral shadows. The light grew, revealing figures emerging from the darkness. Agnes, Thomas, and the man. Their faces, though faded, held a glimmer of hope. "You came." Agnes's voice resonated in the void. "You broke the barrier, your pain our key." "But at what cost?" I whispered, my voice echoing in the emptiness. "This is not your burden," the man said, his voice rough but kind. "We exist in the Weaver's domain, but you belong to the world of light. Go back, carry our story as a torch, warn others of the shadows lurking within the unseen." A portal shimmered into existence, its edges flickering with the colors of dawn. Tears welled in my eyes as I looked back at them, their figures growing fainter. "Thank you," I choked out, "for everything." Stepping through the portal, I landed back in my cabin, the first rays of sun filtering through the windows. The TV lay in pieces, its darkness banished by the light of day. Exhaustion and pain pulsed through me, but beneath it, a spark of hope flickered. I carried their story with me, whispered it at every campfire, shared it with every curious ear. Some dismissed it as a madman's tale, but others felt a tremor of fear, a glimpse into the unknown lurking just beyond the screen. I knew the Weaver wasn't gone. There would be others, lured by the flicker of the unknown, drawn to the edge of the abyss. But now, armed with the knowledge Agnes and the others had paid dearly for, I was ready. I would stand as a sentinel, a lighthouse in the storm, warning of the shadows that dance within the static, guarding the fragile border between our world and the Airs. For even in the darkest corners of the unseen, courage, like a firefly's light, can spark a revolution. And sometimes, the greatest stories are not found in glossy pages, but in the flickering heartbeat of a forgotten television, a testament to the human spirit's resilience in the face of the unimaginable. This is not the end. The struggle against the Weaver has just begun. The story continues, whispered in the static, waiting to be unraveled by those brave enough to listen. Echoes of the static years passed, the chilling encounter with the Weaver etched into my memory like a burned scar. I moved, seeking solace in the bustling anonymity of a city, hoping to outrun the echoes of Agnes, Thomas, and the man trapped in the static. But their whispers followed, carried on the radio waves, the flickering screens of TVs in subway cars, the hum of fluorescent lights. One night, while flipping through channels on a dusty TV in a dingy diner, The familiar static snagged my attention. It pulsated differently this time, not a chaotic torrent, but a rhythmic pulse, like a desperate Morse code message. Driven by a morbid curiosity, I tuned the dial, the image resolving into a snowy black and white picture. A familiar scene unfolded. The field of static sunflowers, the three figures in faded monochrome. But their expressions were strained, eyes darting fearfully, as if searching for something unseen. Then, a voice, raw and desperate, crackled through the static. "Don't trust her. The woman in blue. She's not one of us." The image flickered. The diners hum a menacing undercurrent. The woman in blue. I'd seen her before. A fleeting glimpse in the void after my encounter with the Weaver. A figure of shadow and whispers, her eyes pools of icy malice. Suddenly, the screen went dark, a loud buzzing replacing the static. My heart hammered against my ribs, the diner's greasy spoon clattering like distant thunder. I knew I couldn't ignore this. There was something happening, a new play in the Weaver's twisted game. The diner's air grew thick with dread, the whispers of Agnes and the man echoing in my head. Without a second thought, I grabbed my laptop, a worn backpack, and the diner's dusty atlas. The woman in blue, Agnes's warning hung heavy in the air, was the key. I had to find her, understand her connection to the Weaver, and find a way to stop them. My search led me down a rabbit hole of internet conspiracies, cryptic online forums dedicated to the paranormal, and whispered legends of shadowy figures manipulating the unseen. The woman in blue, I discovered, was more than just a phantom. She was real, known only as the puppeteer, rumored to hold sway over the very fabric of reality, bending technology to her will. Days blurred into weeks, my apartment morphing into a war room filled with maps, schematics, and scribbled notes. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, fueled by an urgent need to find the puppeteer before she unleashed the Weaver's full wrath. One rain-soaked night, hunched over my laptop, I stumbled upon a clue, a hidden message buried within the code of an obscure horror video game, referencing a forgotten research facility rumored to be the puppeteer's lair. It was a long shot, a needle in a haystack, but it was all I had. Packing my meager supplies, I boarded a train, the rhythmic clatter of the wheels, a counterpoint to the frantic thumping of my heart. My journey led me to a desolate stretch of coastline, where the research facility loomed like a decaying monolith against the storm-tossed sky. This was it, the point of no return. Taking a deep breath, I slipped inside, the silence broken only by the dripping of rainwater and the echo of my own footsteps. The air hung heavy with a sense of unseen dread, the sterile metal corridors whispering of forgotten experiments and dark secrets. My every nerve screamed at me to turn back, but I pressed on, drawn by an invisible force. Deeper into the facility I ventured, past flickering emergency lights and cobwebbed control panels, until I reached a pulsating heart at its core, a massive server room humming with unnatural energy. And there, bathed in the blue glow of countless monitors, she stood, the puppeteer. Her features, obscured by shadow, held a chilling familiarity. Was she Agnes's tormentor, the Weaver's accomplice? Before I could question her, the screens around her flared to life, each displaying the field of static sunflowers, but this time, the figures were gone. In their place, a swirling vortex of darkness, the Weaver's malevolent form taking shape within. "Foolish mortal," the Weaver boomed, its voice a cacophony of static and screams. "You've led me straight to my prize." The puppeteer smiled, a cold, predatory glint in her eyes. "Not quite," she countered, her voice echoing through the server room. "Not quite." Her hand darted towards a console, her fingers dancing across a web of keys and glowing buttons. The monitors pulsed in sync, the darkness swirling faster, then abruptly collapsing inwards, trapping the Weaver within a digital prison. A stunned silence engulfed the room. The Weaver's enraged screams, muffled by the digital bars, were the only testament to its entrapment. I stared at the puppeteer, my fear warring with a glimmer of gratitude. "Why?" I choked out, my voice raspy with disbelief. "Why help me?" The puppeteer's smile deepened, but it held no warmth. "The Weaver is not my ally," she hissed, her voice like ice cracking in the cold. "It's a parasite, feeding on the nightmares of our world. I control the shadows, but its hunger threatens to consume us all." Her words echoed Agnes's warnings. The puppeteer, despite her unsettling aura, wasn't entirely evil. She was a keeper of the shadows, maintaining a fragile balance between our world and the Weaver's realm. The woman in blue, I began to understand, was the lesser of two evils, a necessary darkness to combat the greater one. "But the Weaver will escape," I warned, the memory of its raw power sending shivers down my spine. "Its prison is made of code, not steel." The puppeteer tilted her head, her eyes glinting like chips of obsidian. "Perhaps," she conceded, "but I have woven my own threads into its digital cage. It will take time, much time, for it to break free. Time we must use to prepare." The weight of her words struck me like a physical blow. The fight wasn't over. The Weaver, though trapped, was still a ticking bomb, and the puppeteer, despite her grudging alliance, was no hero. We were simply players in a larger game, pawns on a chessboard carved from the fabric of reality. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice hollow with the burden of this newfound knowledge. The puppeteer's smile widened, cruel and knowing. "We prepare, mortal. We gather those who walk the fringes, the whisperers of the unseen, the guardians of the veil. We build an army of shadows, ready to face the coming darkness when the Weaver breaks free." A cold wind seemed to blow through the server room, carrying the chill of countless unseen battles. I knew then that my life would never be normal again. I had stepped into a world of shadows and whispers, a world where reality bent to the will of unseen forces. But I wasn't alone. The puppeteer, for her own reasons, stood beside me, and the echoes of Agnes, Thomas, and the man, their sacrifice a burning ember in my heart, would guide me through the darkness. The battle for the balance of reality had begun, and I, a reluctant soldier in the war between shadows, was all that stood between the light and the encroaching darkness. Years melted into a blurry montage of whispered secrets, flickering screens, and clandestine meetings in forgotten corners of the world. The puppeteer, a chillingly efficient operator, molded me into a weapon against the Weaver. I learned to harness residual energies left behind by the Weaver's incursions, channeling them into shields, wards, and weapons of blinding static light. My companions in this grim crusade were a motley crew, a cynical techie who could navigate the digital prison of the Weaver with the ease of a city street, a reclusive historian obsessed with forgotten lore of the unseen, and a wizened fortune teller with eyes that seemed to see into the very fabric of time. Each brought their own strengths, their own darknesses, to the fight. Our first strike was against the puppeteer's rivals, rogue entities that thrived in the cracks between worlds, feeding on the chaos the Weaver generated. We were shadows fighting shadows, each battle a desperate dance in the flickering space between realities. Each victory, however hollow, bought us precious time to strengthen our defenses, time to prepare for the inevitable. But the Weaver wasn't idle. Its digital screams, though muffled, held a growing malice. Its tendrils, whispers of static, began to reach out from its prison, seeping into the cracks between our world and theirs. Visions, nightmares made flesh, stalked the peripheries, testing our resolve, chipping away at our sanity. One night, under a sky choked with static clouds, the Weaver's prison shimmered, its digital bars buckling under the strain. Fear, cold and visceral, gripped me as the entity's form, a maelstrom of darkness and whispers, clawed its way back into existence. The battle that followed was unlike anything I had ever imagined. The world warped and bent around us, reality itself a malleable plaything in the Weaver's grip. Towers twisted into grotesque limbs, shadows solidified into razor-sharp blades, and screams morphed into living tendrils that lashed out with a hunger for souls. We fought with the desperation of cornered animals, our makeshift weapons barely scratching the Weaver's writhing mass. The historian's arcane scrolls, the fortune teller's whispered prophecies, they all seemed ineffective against this primal embodiment of nightmare. Just as all hope seemed lost, the techie, his face lit by the blue glow of his laptop, unleashed a final, desperate blow. A digital virus, crafted from the echoes of Agnes and the others trapped within the Weaver's realm, coursed through its form, disrupting its cohesion, tearing it from the fabric of our world. With a scream that shattered the night, the Weaver retreated, its essence scattered, its form broken. We had won for now. But the victory was Pyrrhic. The techie, drained by his final act, lay unmoving, a casualty in this war of shadows. The world began to mend, the warped cityscape straightening, the nightmares retreating. But in the silence that followed, a new chill settled upon me. The Weaver was gone, but not defeated. It would return, stronger, hungrier, and we, battered and broken, would have to be ready. As the first rays of dawn kissed the horizon, I looked around at my remaining companions, their faces etched with fatigue and grief. We were a small band of survivors, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of the unthinkable. But this wasn't the end. The war against the shadows had just begun. And in the flickering screens, the whispered warnings, and the shadows under our feet, we knew that the next battle, the true test, loomed on the horizon. We had bought the world a reprieve, a fragile candle flame in the encroaching darkness. But it was time to gather our strength, to hone our weapons, to brace ourselves for the inevitable storm. For the Weaver may have been banished, but it would return, and when it did, we would be waiting, shadows against the shadows, ready to fight for the very soul of our existence. And in the years that followed, when the whispers of the static grew louder, when the flickering screens displayed unsettling glimpses of an approaching darkness, we would remember the fallen, the techie, Agnes, and all those who had paid the ultimate price. We would remember their sacrifices, their stories etched in the static as a torch, a warning, a testament to the courage it takes to face the unseen, to stand against the shadows, and to fight for the fragile light of our world. The story of the Weaver, whispered in the static, may end here, but the fight goes on. The echoes of the unseen never truly fade, and for those who listen, the battle between light and darkness is a constant vigil, a war fought in the flickering spaces between realities. And somewhere, in the labyrinthine corners of the internet, in the forgotten pages of dusty grimoires, and in the flicker of a dying light bulb on a lonely street corner, the whispers continue. They murmur of Agnes and Thomas, lost souls trapped in the Weaver's tapestry, their faces fading with each passing day. They speak of the puppeteer, her motives murky even to us, her icy gaze holding secrets untold. And they scream the Weaver's name, a chilling chorus carried on the wind, a reminder of its inevitable return. We, the tattered remnants of this unseen war, carry the burden of those echoes. We are the guardians of the veil, the sentinels between realities, forever marked by the battles we've fought, the nightmares we've glimpsed. The techie's sacrifice still hangs heavy, a constant echo in the silence. His laptop, the weapon that banished the Weaver, sits inert on my desk, a monument to his courage, a constant reminder of the price we pay. The historian, his beard now flecked with gray, pores over ancient scripts, searching for a prophecy, a forgotten weapon, anything to give us an edge in the coming storm. The fortune teller, her eyes clouded with visions, sees only fragments of the future, each glimpse a shard of a broken kaleidoscope, offering fleeting glimpses of hope and despair in equal measure. And me? I wear my scars like badges of honor, each burn mark a testament to a brush with the darkness. I scour the internet, deciphering cryptic messages from other sentinels, gathering scattered forces, building a network of whispers and shadows against the coming tide. The Weaver never sleeps. Its tendrils, though unseen, reach through the cracks in reality, corrupting dreams, feeding on fear. We find them in the glitches on our screens, the static on the radio, the nightmares that grip us in the dead of night. Each encounter leaves us a little broken, a little closer to the edge. But we fight. We fight for Agnes and Thomas, their echoes a beacon in the darkness. We fight for the techie, whose memory fuels our resolve. We fight for the world, unaware of the monsters that lurk just beyond the veil, the nightmares that dance in the shadows of their screens. And one day, when the Weaver returns, stronger, hungrier, it will find us ready. We will be waiting, a flicker of defiance in the encroaching darkness, a whisper of resistance against the tide of nightmares. We will fight with the memory of those who fell, with the echoes of their stories in our hearts, and with the flickering ember of hope that refuses to be extinguished. For in the darkest corners of the unseen, even the smallest light can cast a long shadow. And sometimes, the quietest whispers are the ones that echo the loudest, carrying the promise that even in the face of impossible odds, humanity's courage will never truly fade. The war for reality may be a silent one, fought in the unseen corners of our world, but its echoes will resonate throughout the ages, a testament to the human spirit's enduring fight against the darkness, a battle waged not for ourselves, but for the fragile, flickering light that defines our existence. And so, the whispers continue, carrying the story of the Weaver, of Agnes and Thomas, of the puppeteer, and of us, the shadows who stand against them. It is a story of sacrifice, of courage, and of the enduring hope that even in the darkest of nights, a single spark can ignite a revolution. And when that spark flares, when the whispers rise to a roar, remember, we are the shadows, and we will fight. Until the light at last prevails.